On the cold night of May 11, 2012, a family in Derby is preparing for bed. But as the children are about to slumber, Michael and Mairead Philpott are carrying out an egregious plot that will rock the entire nation of England to its core. Michael Philpott was born December 1956 in Derby, a benevolent city in the heart of England. Derby is known for being the birthplace of Britain's Industrial Revolution, its vibrant cultural historical scene, and widely diverse restaurants. The East Midlands city hosts a population of about 250,000 people and typically has short, comfortable summers and long, cold winters. Michael, who is more commonly known as Mick, does not share the same historical data as his birth city. There is no information readily available about the domestic tyrant's early life, giving us no insight into how he became one of Britain's most hated fathers. His story begins at the age of 19, when he was training to be in the army. It was then he met his first victim, 15-year-old Kim Hill, who was born in June 1961. Her father was an army officer, and her mother Shirley worked at Navy, Army, and Air Force Institutes, a shop catered to those in the service. Mick gave the impression of someone who was charming and charismatic when he asked a young, naive Kim for her phone number. Kim recalls in later interviews, "You know when you get your sort of first boyfriend, and you get them butterflies in your stomach? It was, like that." Unfortunately for Kim, this love high did not last long. Mick went from charming to repugnant in the blink of an eye, subjecting Kim to a series of physical beatings, both in private and in public. She would be slapped, punched, or kicked if she didn't arrive home by the curfew he forcibly imposed on her. On another occasion, she was wearing a skirt that was too short for Mick's liking, and he responded by shooting her in the groin with a crossbow. He also made it very clear he would not tolerate her giving attention to anyone else, including a baby she was babysitting. During one of her babysitting sessions, Mick appeared with a sledgehammer and cracked her in the kneecap for giving the baby more attention than him. She was not allowed to refuse any of Mick's requests, as he found it disrespectful and rewarding of instant punishment. One evening, she refused to play pool with him while they were in a local bar. His reaction, despite the crowd, was quite ghastly. "He got the thick end of the pool cue and whacked it straight across my mouth in front of a pub load of blokes. And not one of them did anything. My mouth just burst open bleeding. He made me sit and not one bloke said a word to him." "You never say no to Mick Philpott. You never ever say no," recounted Kim. She further explained he would start crying, saying he was sorry, begging her not to tell her father about how she was receiving these physical ailments, and told her she couldn't leave him as he would never hurt her again. Kim believed she was catching a break whenever Mick had to spend time away at his army posts. However, any time he returned, he would violently assault her while accusing her of engaging in affairs in his absence. He would randomly go AWOL while he should have been on post, so he can sneak in on her and perhaps catch her doing something wrong. His bite marks, her broken cheekbones, and bruised fingers were becoming harder to conceal. She had to begin telling school officials she was getting into frequent fights with others at the school so they could explain away the bruises to her family. During the summer of 1978, after 2 years of enduring constant manhandling, Kim decided to finally take a stand and wrote him a letter, breaking up with him. It was something Mick Philpott would not take lightly. On the evening of July 4th, he followed Kim to her home and patiently waited for her father to leave for his routine night shift. At around 2 a.m., he broke into the Hill home and went straight to Kim's room, where she lay asleep. He proceeded to gruesomely stab Kim 27 times before her mother Shirley entered the room, attempting to remove a seething Mick off of her daughter. He then turns to Shirley and stabs her 11 times, mainly in the back, as she tries to escape out of the room and down the stairs to call for help, not knowing Mick already slit the phone wires. With Shirley out of his hair, he turns back to Kim. "I thought he was punching me. He went off and I got myself out of bed, but I just fell on the floor. The next thing I knew, he was attacking me again. He slit my stomach open, all down my back, the tops of my legs and my arms. He punctured both lungs and went through my liver and my kidney. He left me for dead," remembers Kim. It was younger sister, 15-year-old Crystal, who would finally call for help on another house phone after she heard the screams of her sister and mother. When paramedics arrived at the home, they found a disdainful Mick on the stairs, still holding the bloodied knife. He was actually laughing and said to the paramedics, "I wouldn't bother. She's a goner. I've done a good job on her." One would imagine after being gutted open like a fish, survival was highly improbable. Kim would die twice, once on the way to the hospital and again on the operating table, but doctors were able to revive her. She suffered substantial injuries to her lungs, liver, kidneys, bladder, and bowel. However, after an exhaustive thorough surgery and 8 weeks in intensive care, Kim Hill made a remarkable recovery. In December 1978, Mick Philpott would go on to be found guilty of attempted murder and wounding with intent in a jury trial. He was sentenced to 7.5 years for the attempted murder on Kim, and a concurrent 5 years for the grievous bodily harm to her mother Shirley. Kim once again believed she had rid herself of the monster within Mick, but he continued to unapologetically reach out to her, claiming his love for her and even asking her to marry him in a letter written from prison. He was completely unremorseful and incapable of comprehending the severity of his actions. He wrote to me on the basis of, "I know that you'll forgive me and I didn't mean to do any harm. Come and see me soon, and when I get out, we'll start again and get married." I was gobsmacked, literally gobsmacked. He was patting on like he was on holiday. "I've led a completely quiet life for the last 32 years because of that bastard. I won't even go into town and I'm still having treatment. My life has been ruined," a still-affected Kim stated in an interview. To make matters worse, after only serving 3 years and 2 months, Mick was released in 1982 for good behavior. Though it seems his good behavior was not something he'd continue to carry on. Despite practically disemboweling someone just a few years earlier, he found love again with a woman named Pamela Lomax. In 1986, though Mick was still exhibiting his innate signs of control, manipulation, and violence, the couple married. They had 3 children together, David, Richard, and Michaela, before he left her 10 years later for a 14-year-old girl named Heather Kehoe. Heather met Mick in Rainworth, Nottinghamshire, at just 13 years old when he began grooming her with beer, cigarettes, and the promise of love. When Heather turned 16, against her parents' wishes, she ran away to live with Mick, who was about 39 years old at the time. She quickly gave birth to 2 sons back-to-back, Mickey and Aiden. Mick was agitated that Heather failed to birth him a daughter and beat her uncontrollably, possibly the cause for her not being able to conceive again. He continued to physically and sexually assault her until she gathered the courage to leave him in early 2000. In the same year, Mick met Mairead Duffy, a 19-year-old single mother of 1 son, Duane. Mairead proved to be an easy target for Mick, as she just got out of an abusive relationship and was still vulnerable. Within days of meeting, she moved in with Mick at his 3-bedroom home on Victory Road in Derby. In 2001, he met 16-year-old Lisa Willis, an orphan and single mother to 1 son. She moved in with Mick and Mairead as his mistress, resulting in an uncustomary and contentious household. In May 2003, Mick and Mairead tied the knot, with a pregnant Lisa as their bridesmaid. Mick began receiving public criticism in 2006 for his refusal to get a job and choice to live solely off of welfare. By this time, Mick had 4 children with Mairead and fathered 3 more with Lisa, who was now pregnant with their 4th child. He complained to his local council about the house they shared being too crammed since there were 3 adults, 8 children, and another on the way. The city council advised him he lived in one of the biggest homes available in the city and was already receiving in excess of £60,000 per year in benefits. He became frustrated that the city council failed to rehouse them into a more accommodating home. "They always come up with the same excuses. They're just not good enough. I love my country, but at the moment I feel ashamed of it. I think the country is going down the pan," Mick told the Birmingham Post. He then went on to appear on The Jeremy Kyle Show and on an ITV documentary series called Anne Widdecombe versus the Benefit Culture in 2007, as he seemed to love causing a media frenzy. He defended his odd lifestyle, stating, "Do they know me as a family? Do they know my kids? I don't think so. Anybody who wants to see me, my other partner, and my kids, they can come and stop with me for a week, and I guarantee after a week they'll be amazed, especially at the way my children behave. My children are brought up properly." He claimed he was almost done having children and would soon be having a vasectomy. However, It was during this same spotlight in the media he revealed both Mairead and Lisa were each expecting their 5th child with him and were both due in March 2007. It would also be revealed that he cheated on both Mairead and Lisa with a friend's girlfriend, who also fell pregnant. He was soon dubbed with the nickname Shameless Mick, though that didn't stop him from continuing to speak his piece to tabloids, insinuating that everyone was just jealous of him because he lived with 2 women, and any man would love to be in his shoes. In an effort to pay back Mick for his time on her documentary series, Anne Widdecombe found him a job, which he failed to show up for. He was offended at the job offer and referred to Widdecombe as an interfering bitch. He didn't feel the need to work as both Mairead and Lisa contributed to the household income, and he had his welfare benefits to rely on. "Some people call me a scrounger, but I'm not. I'm just a good father," Mick stated to tabloids. Forensic psychologist Dr. Carrie Nixon gave their opinion on Shameless Mick and the empire he was building. His children became numbers. Numbers equal money. The more children, the more money. The more children, the better opportunity in terms of housing. Children were just another part of Philpott's selfish, egocentric, narcissistic, antisocial personality to get what Philpott wants. By February 2012, Mick had 6 children with Mairead and 5 with Lisa. Sick of living in undesirable conditions and being forced to obey Mick's iron fist, Lisa decided to escape from the home with her children on February 11th. She told him that she would be taking the children out for their swimming lessons and never returned. This would not be taken lightly by Mick, who became obsessed with Lisa, urging her to come back home. But it was too late. Lisa had already filed a custody case against Mick, and with his repugnant lifestyle already broadcasted across the nation, she would be sure to win. Lisa's decision to leave is the catalyst that led to the grim and harrowing event that would take place just a few months later. On May 11, 2012, one day before their child custody hearing, Mick put into action the demonic plan he devised with wife Mairead and their friend Paul Mosley to teach Lisa a lesson she'd never forget. Friend Paul arrives at the home once Mairead and Mick put their 6 children to bed. The 3 discuss their diabolical plan once more to make sure they all have their stories straight as they drank heavily, smoked marijuana, and partook in a threesome. Around 3 a.m., Mick begins what he believes will be the perfect revenge for Lisa leaving him. He begins by splashing petrol on the floor in the hallways of the home while Paul works on getting rid of the empty containers to avoid any incriminating evidence. Mick believed he could start a fire, rescue the sleeping children from the flames, become a national hero, rid himself of the Shameless Mick persona, and blame Lisa for the entire ordeal. He would then get custody of the children he had with Lisa and continue to collect welfare benefits for them. But his plan swiftly failed. Mick lights a match around 3:30 a.m., and the house quickly goes up in flames, spreading like wildfire and blocking the children's only planned escape route. Mick did not anticipate the fire escalating as quickly as it did, and his plan to play hero and rescue them no longer seemed doable. Feeling they were unable to do anything, all of the adults left the home as the children were heard helplessly screaming and begging for their parents to come help them, as they inhaled the poisonous black fumes that now engulfed the home. They made their way to a neighbor's garden to keep a safe distance from the fire, and Mairead phoned emergency services around 3:46 a.m. while she tried her best to sound devastated.
The house is on fire, my kids are in bed.
Yes, what address?
18 Victory Road, Mrs. Philpott.
Mrs. Philpott. How many kids are in the house, Mrs. Philpott? Where are they?
I'm 6 of them.
Are there any flames there?
Oh my God, please.
Alright, we've got the fire service coming on the way.
I can't get my back in the kitchen. There's 6 of them.
Is it a terraced house? Yeah, but we've got the police on the way. Have you any idea what's caused the fire?
I've no idea, mate, but it's been woke up by day long. There's smoke everywhere.
There's smoke everywhere.
Please, God, my baby's all up. I can't get out.
Okay, what's your name, please?
I can't get out. There's no noise to be children. There's no noise to be children.
Mick immediately starts telling his neighbors, who have now gathered frantically in front of the home, that he believes Lisa is responsible for starting the fire. One neighbor, Jamie Butler, ignores Mick's strange behavior and tries to go into the home in an effort to rescue the children, but the fire was impenetrable. Jamie stated later, "There was no emotion out of none of them. If he would have grabbed hold of me and said, 'Please come on, let's get in there, my kids are in there,' I know that would have been a true man as a father." Another neighbor, Mick Russell, burst into tears during the fire and later recounted, "He was comforting me. I was sitting there crying my head off and he was comforting me. You know, I am supposed to be the one comforting him." Firefighters were finally able to tame the fire, but it was too late. One by one, the small bodies emerged from the home in the arms of the firemen as distraught neighbors watched on. 10-year-old Jade, 9-year-old John, 7-year-old Jack, 6-year-old Jesse, and 5-year-old Jaden. They soon find out that 13-year-old Duane had somehow survived in the flames and was whisked away to Birmingham Children's Hospital in critical condition. Though Duane was fighting for his life, parents Mick and Mairead would wander off, frequently leaving him alone. One would think the guilt of what they had just done would make them be more concerned, but the couple showed absolutely no remorse or support for the dying boy. Neighbor Mick Russell went to the hospital to give moral support and check in on the boy, but was further appalled by Mick's bizarre behavior. "All of a sudden I heard him shout, 'Mick!' And I turned around, I said, 'What?' And he's grabbing this girl's arse and saying, 'This is what I like.' I said, 'You got a lad in there dying, mate, and 5 of your kids are dead. Is that what you're still thinking about?' Unfortunately, 2 days later, Duane ultimately fell victim to the smoke inhalation and passed away on May 13, 2012. Mick continued to place blame on Lisa to anyone who would listen, though Lisa Willis would quickly be ruled out for any foul play, as her alibi was completely solid. On May 14th, possibly due to the allegations by Mick, authorities inspected the home and found the fire was indeed started deliberately. They also found the empty petrol containers in and near the home. On suspicion of Mick and Mairead due to their peculiar behavior, police decided to bug the Premier Inn on Southmead Way, where they resided after the fire. They overheard the couple confirming their involvement in the fire along with their friend Paul Mosley. On May 28th, the couple was arrested, and after extensive interviews, they were charged with murder on May 30th. In June 2012, Paul was also arrested for his involvement, but had soon been released on bail. It wasn't until November 5th that Paul was officially charged with murder, which would later be downgraded to manslaughter. Mick and Mairead's charges would also be lightened to manslaughter, as they ruled the intention was not to kill the children, but to vengefully frame Lisa. On February 12, 2013, the trial at Nottingham Crown Court commenced, and after a daunting 7 weeks, a verdict was reached. On April 2, 2013, Michael Philpott, Mairead Duffy, and Paul Mosley were found guilty of the manslaughter of all 6 children. On April 4th, Mick was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 15 years, while Mairead and Mosley were each sentenced to 17 years, with parole possible at the halfway mark. Mairead was released in October 2020, while Paul was released in October 2023. Mick Philpott, thankfully, remains in prison. It is apparent that Michael Philpott was a power-hungry, psychopathic womanizer. And yet, no matter his actions, women continued to breed with this fertile monster. Knowing this man almost gutted a woman to death, knowing he refused to work, knowing he spread his seed any and everywhere, they still submitted to him. While Mick was the clear mastermind in the abominable event that took place on May 11, 2012, the people who excused and allowed his appalling behavior throughout the years are just as responsible. And though half of his children are deceased, it is the children still living who must deal with the mental anguish caused by his heinous crimes. It is no surprise Shameless Mick will always be considered one of Britain's most evil fathers. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the True Crime Collector for more.